Sidelined indefinitely due to league COVID-19 health and safety protocols. So, Monica, what is your reaction to this news?
Well, the first reaction, Charlie, is that you hope that this is not, or you hope rather that this is an asymptomatic case for Chris and that he is well, right? Like, we still have to keep the human element in mind in this, and we're still losing Americans to this horrible disease. So first of all, you hope that Chris is 100% going to make a full recovery and be well. And then the second part of it, give me the calendar. I believe if the series that they're waiting on goes to Game 7, they wouldn't play until Tuesday. From what I understand, Malika Andrews reporting this morning that CP3 is vaccinated, and that should shorten the time within this protocol. But immediately, you're looking at the calendar. When can Chris Paul get back on the floor to go alongside his brethren in this Phoenix Sun squad? This is no breaking news, a drastically different unit if you take away the experience, the leadership, the floor general that Chris Paul has been to this squad. And then, of course, for all of us that have watched Chris for years and years get to the playoffs and have the worst timely injuries or now a COVID diagnosis, I mean, you absolutely hate to see this. So first thing up in my mind is his health. The second thing is, when can he get back on the floor? I think if he misses a game, that's a little bit different than if we're talking 3 games. So you hope that he can get back on the floor, and then you hate to see these kind of breaks for Chris, man. We're right here. We're finally getting to see the promise.
Monica, I echo everything you said, and the word that came to mind when I heard about this was snake bit. Because I remember something like this happening to a guy named Patrick Ewing of the New York Knicks. Not to the level, of course, of dealing with COVID-19, but how many times was Patrick Ewing snake bit throughout his whole career? He ran into the Detroit Pistons early, then the Chicago Bulls. Then when he finally had that team with Allen Houston and Latrell Sprewell and Marcus Camby, he breaks his ankle in a playoff series. They wind up losing in 5 games to the San Antonio Spurs in a strike-shortened season. We don't know if Patrick Ewing would have helped the Knicks win a victory, but the chance would have been a lot better with a healthy Patrick Ewing. That's what reminds me of this situation when it comes to Chris Paul. And you're exactly right. I'm more concerned about the person being healthy and people around him being healthy more than anything else. But for the first time ever in his career, he had the squad, a mixture of youth and also experience. All of that in Chris Paul and Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, the coach with Monty Williams. They were the healthiest team of anybody left standing in the NBA playoffs. And now you have this situation creeping with a guy that not only is your leader, but he was one hell of a damn closer in the series against the Denver Nuggets. When they needed somebody to go get it, Chris Paul's able to go get it. And that's not to say that Devin Booker can't, or campaign definitely can. You can't put that kind of pressure on him. But whatever this indefinite absence is going to be, is going to affect the Phoenix Suns, because whenever he gets back, remember, he can't practice with the team. He can't be around the team at all. So whatever continuity and chemistry you've been able to develop outside of games, that's going to be lessened a little bit. I can't remember a more snake bit NBA player since Patrick Ewing, and that guy has become Chris Paul. So, Monica, you're exactly right in terms of the person first, but we live on planet Earth. This really affects the Phoenix Suns on and off the basketball court. How they deal with that and when he comes back, or who knows, that's going to be the interesting answer. I'm looking to see how they're going to deal with this setback with a team that was looking very, very strong to get to the NBA Finals and represent the West in the NBA Finals.
Well, that's my next question, because he is out indefinitely, but should he be out for the following series, how far can the Suns go, Monica?
Ooh, Charlie, do we have to go there? Do we have to think about that? I mean,
we have to speculate.
If either of the teams, if either of the teams that they're waiting on, whether it be the Clippers or the Jazz. Now, obviously, we also need to see how serious this Kawhi Leonard knee injury is. But, they automatically lose an edge without Chris Paul. I mean, I believe in the finals, but I don't think that they get out of the finals without Chris Paul. It's not just the X and O's and the basketball part of it, right? It is the leader. It is the moment. It is in the fourth quarter through both of the series that we've watched this team come through. He's the one that shows up and goes 4 for 4 or whatever the case may be in the biggest moments of the basketball game. Mikal Bridges, Cameron Payne, Devin Booker, the whole gang, they have made tremendous strides, right? But this would be their first finals opportunity as well, right? And so I don't know that there's enough words to express the difference that Chris Paul makes, because on the flip side, if it is the Clippers, you got a guy in Kawhi Leonard, if he's able to get back, that's been there, done that, right? And if it is the Jazz, we're talking about a squad that has been in the top efficiency in the league on both sides of the ball all season long. And quite honestly, while I've loved DeAndre Ayton's glow up, I should say, in the playoffs, you're going up against Rudy Gobert, right? Like, now, the Jazz missing Mike Conley probably is kind of the same scenario, but I don't like this team to get out of the finals if they don't have Chris Paul, if it gets to that.
I don't think this team wins the NBA Finals. I'm going to go out and say it right there because that's how important Chris Paul's been to this basketball team. And you mentioned Mike Conley. It's weird you mentioned that, Monica, because Seth Greenberg, NBA and college basketball analyst, he and I were talking about this before we came on the air today. And he said Mike Conley and Chris Paul are sort of the same thing because look how much that you have to have one guy facilitate everything, named Donovan Mitchell with the Utah Jazz, because Mike Conley was so good at relieving that pressure. Now you're going to have to ask Devin Booker to do the same thing, where that takes away his effectiveness because Chris Paul was so good at making sure the guys got the ball on time, where that relieves a lot of stress on the Devin Booker where you don't have to do everything. Now Devin Booker doesn't have to be that kind of Steph Curry combo guard to initiate the offense at times, and we've seen how that has not worked for Donovan Mitchell with Mike Conley being out in the last two games against an improved Clippers defense in this series. Now you're going to have to ask Devin Booker to do the same thing. Cam Payne, the backup point guard, averages 15 minutes off the bench. You're going to have to increase that to 29, 30 minutes. Who's to say he's going to be that much more effective? That's how many other people outside of the basketball court, when it comes to health, are going to be compromised because Chris Paul was so central to what Phoenix was able to do. If he's out for an indefinite amount of time and then you got to ratchet back up again to get this all started again, that's really going to retard the progress that they've been able to make to get to this point when you're the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, it'll be extremely unfortunate. So again, for Chris Paul, keeping our fingers crossed he will be able to play soon, get out of that COVID-19 protocol. But on a positive note, Chris Paul has now become the second guard to make All NBA in his 16th season or later joining the great Kobe Bryant. And speaking of great, let's take a look at what happened last night. Okay, we begin with breaking news this morning. LA Clippers star Kawhi Leonard expected to miss tonight's Game 5 with the Utah Jazz with a right knee injury, and he could be out the remainder of the series. That according to sources of ESPN. Leonard tweaked his knee on a drive late in the Clippers' Game 4 victory. He stayed in briefly, but did not finish the game. Certainly not the news we want to get the show started with, but you came to the right place as we do have you covered. Welcome to First Take. I'm Charlie Arnold, joined by Freddie Coleman and Monica McNutt. Now, Freddie, we're going to get right into it. What is your reaction to the Kawhi news?
When I first heard about this injury, Monica and Charlie, I said, boy, it looked really innocuous when he had that injury in Game 4 and the Clippers went over the Utah Jazz. So if this is something that's going to keep him out of the rest of this series, that's going to be very interesting. But I got a message for Paul George. And Paul George, I know we're not friends, we're not close, but dude, this message is for you. You have to tag Playoff P. Now you got to live up to it because Kawhi Leonard is that dude that you can't replace his production. Over 27 points per game, over 7 rebounds. He's a 3-level dude. He can score at 3 levels. So Playoff P, this is now your basketball team. You can't be the Robin. You've got to be the Batman right now for the rest of this series and lead your team to the promised land called the Western Conference Finals and beyond if Kawhi Leonard could be out for the rest of the playoffs. Paul George, for the first time in a long time, you are now the man. You got to step up and act like the man because the dude that was the man is not going to be there. You got to step into his place and be that guy. If you can't be that guy, then all those whispers and all that language around you is going to be true. They're not going to call you Playoff P anymore. They're going to call you Way Off P. And that's the last thing you want. So Paul George, I hate to put it on you, but this is what you wanted, this kind of situation. Live up to it. Kawhi Leonard's not going to be there to bail you out. You're going to have to bail out this team and bail out yourself and your reputation when it's all said and done.
Freddie, you're not wrong in that challenge, shall we call it, to Paul George. But as our good friend Kendrick Perkins has said, I have moved Paul George to my it is what it is team, right? Not that he cannot be a prolific scorer, not that he doesn't have the capability to shift the outcome of a game based on his performance, but I'm actually looking at the rest of this team. Because to me, the piece that has been the most confusing about this Clippers squad has not been what they can and cannot do physically on the basketball court. It has been the attitude with which they approach ball games. And what I saw from Kawhi Leonard that I have not seen from the rest of that unit, when it was go time in both the Dallas series and coming out of the deficit in the Jazz series, Kawhi Leonard took that on his shoulders without hesitation and rose to the occasion both offensively and defensively. When it comes to Paul George, skill, ability, physical body and capability, yes. But I'm not 100% sure that the attitude, which was still kind of like pulling teeth to bring it out of Kawhi Leonard, will be there. And so for that, I'm now looking at a guy like Reggie Jackson, who has shot the ball well in this series. I'm looking at a guy like Marcus Morris Sr., who has also shot the ball well in this series. Both of those guys are veterans in this league and have a little grit to their personalities. There has to be a way for the "we will not be denied" attitude to infiltrate this team. And the one thing that I've been the most impressed with the Clippers as this series has continued has been what they've been able to do defensively. They are flying around on that side of the ball 1 through 5, and not just the person that is tasked with slowing Donovan Mitchell. And so if they can maintain that and allow their defense to then carry over into some offense, I think they give themselves a shot. But as much as it is the 65% and the plus or 30-point performances we've seen that will be absent, I'm also wondering who's going to step up and bring the mentality that the Clippers are going to need to get this done.
Monica, you're correct. Here's why you're correct. It has to start with Paul George. You're exactly right about an attitude adjustment.
We're going to get it, Freddie.
I get it. I'm the same way. I got my head in my hands like this, too, about Paul George wondering if he's going to do it. But, Monica, he has to. You understand these things. You played at Georgetown. You played in Big East basketball. When a star goes down, when Broadway is ready and the lead is not there, the understudy